surge in terms of the global mental health that we are faced with as a global community, and most importantly within the global south, where marginalized communities or many of our people are experiencing difficulties in terms of attaining good quality.
Officials in Indonesia say more than 1,000 school children have suffered food poisoning this week after eating school lunches. It's the latest in a series of outbreaks to hit the president's multi-billion-dollar free meals program. The BBC's Anbarasan Etirajan has the details.
The latest mass poisoning was reported in 4 areas of Indonesia's West Java province, increasing demands to suspend the scheme. One official said small hospitals in West Bandung were overwhelmed by 6 students. There have been questions over the oversight of the project since it was launched in January by President Prabowo Subianto, who says the initiative will help transform Indonesia into a country that is free from poverty and hunger.
Recapping the top story this hour, Ugandan opposition leader, pop star turned politician Bobby Wine has been cleared to stand for president. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo-Ngwebe.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Now, sports headline: the Ballon d'Or isn't just another trophy, but it has no financial reward. Rwandans are delighted with the business opportunities brought by the 2025 UCI Road World Championships. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
It is a very good afternoon to you, Kenya. Good afternoon, Somalia, Senegal, Eritrea. Good afternoon to you, Tanzania, Botswana, Eswatini. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport and business. Coming up for your Thursday edition of Africa in Business, our usual G20 feature, which we simulcast along with SAFM and the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. And this afternoon, we focus on President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa's address at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. We'll be in conversation this afternoon with Dr. Sizonkala, Research Fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. What we do and bring you every single Thursday as well is our exclusive C-Suite feature. This afternoon, we feature the CEO of an energy drink company that pairs well with gaming. He is Dennis Avaden, and finding out how the energy drink industry on the African continent is unfolding, as well as competition within that market. That's just a highlight of what we've got in store for you this afternoon. Do stay tuned from 4 to 5 p.m. as we bring you the latest in-depth business news from the African continent. Welcome to it. This is Africa in Business.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We begin here this afternoon. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund have sounded the alarm over Ethiopia's rising debt burden, warning that it has reached unsustainable levels. According to the two institutions, the country's repayment capacity has been severely strained by persistent breaches of export-related debt indicators, alongside mounting political, economic and humanitarian pressures. The report further highlights how short and medium-term debt service obligations are compounding Ethiopia's financial strain. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Simosa has the details.
Ethiopia's weak debt carrying capacity has placed the country in debt distress following its default on a $33 million Eurobond coupon payment. A joint analysis notes that in March 2025, The government reached an agreement in principle with its official creditors under the G20 Common Framework. Now, given Ethiopia's default on its Eurobond coupon payment and the IMF and World Bank's classification of its debt as unsustainable, how realistic is it that the G20 Common Framework restructuring will restore the debt sustainability by 2027 and 2028? Economist Progress Palsprims shares his perspective.
Restoring debt sustainability by 2027-2028 under the G20 Common Framework looks ambitious. The progress depends on creditor coordination, but given Ethiopia's weak revenues and the large financing gaps, success will likely require deeper relief and strong IMF support.
Palsprims says the political instability and ongoing armed conflicts pose a threat to Ethiopia's ability to implementing the necessary fiscal and structural reforms attached to the IMF program.
The political instability and the ongoing conflicts are the biggest risks in this case. They undermine investor confidence, they disrupt reforms, and they drain physical resources, making it far harder for the government to stick to the IMF conditions or to stabilize the economy.
How much of Ethiopia's debt distress is structural, linked to its narrow export base and governance challenges, versus cyclical, tied to global shocks like commodity price swings and currency depreciation?
Well, looking at the structural and the cyclical debt distress, the crisis is more structural than cyclical. So if you look at Ethiopia's narrow export base and the state-led growth model and the governance bottlenecks, they are the main drags. So in addition to that, we have global shocks like the currency depreciation and the rising interest rates. They actually made things worse, but they are not the root cause.
As Ethiopia battles to restore debt sustainability, the road ahead remains uncertain. While the G20 Common Framework offers a potential lifeline, the country's political instability, fragile export base, and mounting fiscal pressures continue to weigh heavily on recovery prospects. For now, creditors and policymakers face a delicate balancing act between economic reforms and the urgent humanitarian needs on the ground. For Channel Africa News, Innocent Simos in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 11 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, the action heats up this Saturday, the 27th of September. Orlando Pirates take on Loili in the CAF Champions League Round 2 prelims, happening live from Orlando Stadium in South Africa. Don't blink, don't miss a moment from kickoff, which starts at 3 p.m. only on SABC 1 and SABC Plus. The battle begins now.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
In just a short moment, we'll be going into our G20 feature for this week, a focus on South Africa and its presidency. Why don't you let us know what you think so far of developments leading up to the G20 summit, which is happening in the month of November. What are the key areas and sectors that you have been following up on? You'll find us on all the various social media platforms, on X, Instagram and YouTube. You'll find us at Channel Africa 1, and on Facebook we are at Channel Africa. And also, if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, and have dared to venture into the energy drinks or soft drinks business, we'd love to hear from you and what your experiences have been, specifically as an African or somebody who's based on the African continent and targeting the African market. What have your experiences been? What are the challenges that you face, especially because a large number of these energy drinks companies are not domiciled or originated from the African continent? And I'm asking this because later on this afternoon, we'll be speaking to an entrepreneur who has dared to venture into the energy drinks company. And that will be our C-Suite feature for this afternoon. Once again, you'll find us on X, Instagram and YouTube at Channel Africa 1. And on Facebook, we are at Channel Africa.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Bina l'export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa and SAFM, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
It has gone exactly 16 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. As we do every single Thursday, we bring you our special G20 feature between us as Channel Africa and SAFM, the National Pulse hosted by Ashraf Garda. Now, as the countdown to the G20 summit in November is well underway, today we shine the spotlight on South Africa's G20 presidency as well as the priorities of that presidency. And these include strengthening disaster resilience and response, taking action to ensure debt sustainability for low-income countries, mobilizing finance for a just energy transition, as well as harnessing critical minerals for inclusive growth and sustainable development. Now, these have been some of the key issues that South Africa has brought onto the table for the duration of its G20 presidency.
And they certainly are. Thanks for that, Thami. Good to connect with you once again. And talking about just that, of course, all of this ahead of the general debate of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which, as you know, has been going on over the last few days. South Africa indicated that the General Assembly affords it an opportunity to amplify its priorities for South Africa's G20 presidency, which, as you know, has the theme of solidarity, equality and sustainability. So I tell you what, before we get to a further conversation, let's play an extract of South Africa's President Ramaphosa addressing the 80th session of the UN General Assembly.
As member states of the United Nations, we have all adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. However, many of these goals remain elusive. There are many reasons that hold many countries back from fulfilling and implementing these development goals. Some of these reasons are lack of sufficient financial resources that can finance the advance that these countries need to make to fulfill those goals. Many countries with developing economies, especially in Africa and the global south, do not have adequate capital to finance their development goals. They are indebted and are paying much more on debt servicing than they do on health and education. In fact, these countries pay much more than countries in the north for their debt. Yet through global solidarity, by having fairer lending rules, especially for several of the global south countries, we can achieve our shared commitment. Through the G20 process, we are working towards building consensus on how this problem can be tackled, including the reform of international financial institutions, particularly multilateral development banks, to better tackle global challenges that many countries face. The multilateral trading system needs to be reformed as we reconfirm that the World Trade Organization remains the only multilateral body that is capable of managing differences and coordinating positions in global trade.
So that was the South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. So as we mentioned earlier on, we are going to be focusing on the role of South Africa and its G20 presidency. And to go further deeper into this, we joined this afternoon by Dr. Sizonkala, who's research fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Doctor, a very warm welcome to you. Good to have you with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Thami, and good afternoon to your listeners. Thank you for having me.
Now, one thing, Doctor, that has been quite clear about South Africa's presidency right from the start is, yes, it is the first time that it is being held on the African continent, but it is not South Africa's G20. It really is Africa's G20. And with that in mind, and perhaps as the premise of our conversation today, if we look at the African Union's priorities, and perhaps more specifically under Agenda 2063, how are South Africa's G20 priorities being reflected within those broader African Union agendas? And how can the African Union, in partnership with South Africa, ensure that these indeed are going to be achieved?
Well, thank you for your question. I think South Africa's G20 priorities, as outlined by President Ramaphosa at the UN summit, I think they are very much a reiteration of the priorities outlined under the AU Agenda 2063. So it's a South African G20, as you stated. And if you look at the priorities, debt sustainability for low-income countries, it's at the center. This is something that is at the center of the African agenda. I think about 14 African countries are under debt distress as we speak. The African continent as a whole, I think they has about $1.4 trillion in external debt, which is way more than Africa's collective export earnings. So this represents, I think, a financial crisis. So some of the countries, I think about 25 countries in Africa, spend more than 10% of their revenue on debt interest payment than they do on, spending more on debt interest payment than they do on such critical services such as health and education. So it's quite a crisis, and it's a relevant issue for South Africa to tackle using the G20 platform. If you look at the disaster resilience and response, it's quite an important issue as well. Africa is affected by natural disasters, floods, droughts, heat waves, earthquakes, which cause untold suffering to millions of African citizens. So while African countries contribute the least to the climate change processes that cause these extreme weather events, they suffer disproportionately as compared to the global north countries. So I think that's an issue that needs to be spotlighted.
Let me come in, Dr. Nkala. You know, one of the things that South Africa's President Ramaphosa made at his UN address, right, he spoke about recent trade trends. So, I mean, here's the big question in the build-up to G20. How can South Africa, how can Africa, in fact, truly leverage of the opportunities that may fall its way purely by South Africa being chairing or the G20?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for Africa to present its case for a more fair and a more equitable multilateral trading system, which is under assault, by the way, from primarily the United States under President Donald Trump. So I think Africa has to speak with one voice when it comes to the reform or improvement of a multilateral trading system in a way that would enhance inclusive growth and economic resilience on part of African countries and broader developing world. So if you look, this is a historical issue, I think, because when Africa was incorporated into the global economy, it was incorporated under terms that were not of its own, I think, formulation. So the trade terms, the international trade terms under which Africa participates in the global trading system, were not authored by Africa. They are unfair to Africa, and they, I think, perpetuate the disadvantaged position of Africa in the global economy as the supply of raw materials. So that needs to be changed. How it will be changed, no one knows. It will depend, I think, on the negotiations on the G20 platform and also on the World Trade Organization platforms.
One thing, Doctor, is the President made reference of this in his address, and you did too in answering the first question that I asked you a bit earlier on, and this is in reference to the high indebtedness by some states in the global south, as well as the high cost of servicing that debt. Now, if we look at the numbers in many of the poorer countries, servicing of debt is consuming between 10 to 30%, and in many cases even more of their revenues, and in turn this then reduces their ability to be able to spend on health, education, etc. What would you advocate and what is South Africa and the G20 advocating as specific policies or reforms that can be put in place in order for debt relief or the financial stability for these emerging markets to be secured?
I think first there has to be a more effective, I think there needs to be an improvement on the common debt treatment framework that was adopted by the G20 actually in, I think it was in 2020. It hasn't proved to be particularly effective in addressing the debt crisis in developing countries. So more discussions must be had on that framework, and it must be improved. Also, I think the reform of the international financial institutions, where African countries and developing countries in general hold the least power, these have to be reformed because the decisions made by these bodies, the IMF, the World Bank, affect African countries in the the broader developing world the most, especially when it comes to interest rates. African countries and developing countries pay way more. I think about 4 times more interest rates than the United States, and then 12 times more interest rates than countries like Germany, which is quite unjust. And these interest rates are based, I think, on one of the major flaws of the international financial system, which which relates to the flawed credit rating systems. This has been an issue that has been raised over and over again. There has to be a reform of the credit rating system globally, because credit ratings agencies profile the risk of African countries on distorted perceptions. So that's why it's becoming increasingly difficult for African countries to access capital on the capital markets, and also that's why African countries are made to pay such exorbitant interest rates, which are not sustainable at all.
Dr. Nkala, let's wrap up with this, right? You know, South Africa has had a clear position around some of the big geopolitical issues of the world. Their position on Israel versus Palestine is well documented. They've also come across as being this non-aligned country between the Ukraine and Russia. So therefore, here's my point. What role has South Africa played using G20 in mediating between developed and developing nations? And if the answer is nothing, what role should it play, but playing it through its leveraging of G20?
Well, I think South Africa has tried its best to assert itself and become the spokesperson of the developing world when it comes to key issues we mentioned earlier. I mean, disaster resilience and response, debt sustainability, financing for just energy transition, and now critical minerals. I think they have tried to make the case for developing countries. Whether the global north listens, I'm not sure. I'm not convinced they're listening. I mean, if you look at President Trump's speech at the United Nations, he was denying climate change in his speech, something that is at the center of the African agenda. I don't think there will be any agreement there in terms of how to tackle climate change. And the United States pulled out of the Just Energy Transition Program, which was a finance mechanism for South Africa's climate change agenda. They pulled out of that program. So it will be very, very difficult to come to an agreement on that issue. And if you also look at the climate finance, the flow of climate finance from developed countries to developing countries, it hasn't met the expectations. Developed countries have not been forthcoming in terms of availing climate finance to developing countries. And despite the promises that they've made, I mean, they made as far back as 2015 at the Paris Climate Conference. So that there is no political will or commitment from the developed countries. So that is something that South Africa has to deal with. Not only South Africa, Africa and the broader developing world. So these are thorny issues.
They certainly are. And as you're highlighting, Dr. Nkala, actually, the United States, I think Argentina is the other country as well, not actually signing that final declaration as far as agriculture is concerned, specifically because of the issues of climate change and not agreeing with that terminology that's being used. But we're going to leave it at that for this afternoon. Doctor, thank you so much for your insight and just putting all of that into perspective for us this afternoon. So much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That's Dr. Sizo Ngala, Research Fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies with the University of Johannesburg. Thank you so much. Ashraf Garda, always a pleasure, and certainly looking forward to us dissecting the G20 issues once again next week when we reconvene.
And I'll hold you to that. Thanks for that indeed. Right, let's get to the news headlines here.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
It's gone exactly 4:32 Central African time as we head over now to the markets, where Thabiso Lehoko is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Thami, and good afternoon. The dollar in South Africa will cost you 17.29 Rand. Botswana, 13 Pula 16. In Namibia, it's at 17 Namibian dollars 29. And in Zambia, it's trading at 23 kwacha 60. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 462. Ethiopia, 145 birr 131. Uganda, 3,000 shilling 478. And in Tanzania, it is at 2,000 shilling 461. In Nigeria, the dollar is trading at 1,488 naira. In Egypt, it's at 48 Egyptian pound 148. Tunisia, 2 dinar 894. Algeria, 128 dinar 533. And in Morocco, the Moroccan dirham is trading at 911 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 911 kwanza 888, while the Congolese franc is at 2,724 to the US dollar. Gold is trading at $3,764 and platinum at $1,494 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $67.79 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And for the business of sport, here is Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. We begin with football news. The Ballon d'Or isn't just another trophy. It's a pinnacle of football recognition, a symbol of influence and excellence on the pitch. Every year, fans, pundits and players themselves debate who truly deserves it. Paris Saint-Germain winger Ousmane Dembele won the Ballon d'Or on Monday as a reward for his starring role in the club's Champions League triumph last season. Unlike other awards or sports competitions, the Ballon d'Or doesn't come with a direct cash prize. France Football, the organization behind the award, focuses entirely on honoring footballing achievement. The trophy itself has value roughly $4,000, but it's mostly symbolic, a beautiful piece of metal and crystal that represent the peak of the sport. So if there's no official cash prize, what does a Ballon d'Or win really mean for a player? Winning the award instantly boosts a player profile. Clubs, sponsors and fans pay attention, and the player's transfer value can skyrocket. Many players have clauses in their contract that reward them for winning top accolades. A Ballon d'Or winner can easily pocket millions extra depending on their club. And in cricket news, former Zambian cricketer and now a qualified ICC coach Saidi Malama runs his own cricket academy for girls to introduce them to the sport. Timor-Leste and Zambia are two countries, one in Southeast Asia and the other in Southern Africa, that recently became members of the International Cricket Council, the ICC, in July 2025. Following readmission, the ZCU is prioritizing organizing under-19 tournaments and promoting cricket for girls with limited finances. Malama explains further about financial support.
First of all, I should recommend the government, because the government, once they open doors for you to bring the girl child to the training facilities, which is a moral support, and we thank the government of the Ministry of National Sport, the Ministry of Sport and National Sports Council, and hence we're having this girl child coming to play. That is a moral support. Financially support, we are still working in line with the National Sports Council to see what program we can line up for next year for the girl child, so that the government also can get involved in terms of funding. And besides that, we want to involve the NGOs. We have quite a number of NGOs standing for the girl child. So if we involve the NGOs around the country, especially in the rural areas you mentioned, to spread the game of cricket.
Malama says Zambia Cricket becoming the member of the International Cricket Council and the NGOs getting involved with his academy and development outside companies will also get on board.
Outside partnership with the companies, and I'm sure definitely once they see the NGOs coming in, we are going to make a big impact with the outside partnership like big companies, Trade King and these others. But for the time being, at the moment, everything is on the table. We are working it on the drawing board. Hopefully things will work out by next year.
Now on to cycling. As the UCI Road World Championships, global attention is firmly fixed on Rwanda. But beyond the cyclists and the medals, the event is proving to be a strategic opportunity for the country's business community. The 2025 UCI Road World Championships is in Kigali and it's underway and will end on the 28th of September, marking the first world's ever staged on the African continent. for local enterprises. The real race is not on the streets, but in positioning themselves for lasting economic gains. The fan zone and related events have become a live showcase of Rwanda's entrepreneurial potential. Women-led ventures, artisans, restaurants, and service providers are connecting with thousands of international visitors, corporate partners, and media representatives. Major international events like the UCI Championships act as accelerators for investment. Rwanda has consistently demonstrated that it can host large-scale gatherings efficiently, reinforcing confidence in the country's business climate. Let's end with netball. One of Africa's leading financial services company, Mukuru Money Transfer Company, has committed $386,000 in a 3-year sponsorship for netball in Malawi, specifically supporting the under-21 national team and the under-21 netball league, with the aim of boosting youth netball development in the country. Mukuru Money Transfer Company, who are also the official sponsors of the Malawi under-21 national netball team, provided a special treatment to netball followers in Blantyre by bringing them together, where they were offered an opportunity of watching a live opening match on the big screen as the Junior Queens were in Trinidad and Tobago. They say the purpose of the financial support is to enhance the development of youth netball in Malawi and include a package of netball uniforms. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is exactly 4:40 Central African time. The Soweto Showdown coming up this Saturday, the 27th of September. Kaizer Chiefs face Kabuskop in the CAF Confederations Cup at the iconic FNB Stadium. The quick question is, who will dominate the pitch? Tune in live at 3 p.m. on SABC2. The game is on, and it's everywhere.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Now, today in the C-suite, we're joined by the CEO of an energy drink that pairs well with gaming. I'm talking about none other than Dennis Vaden. He is a serial entrepreneur with over 30 years of experience in building businesses right from the ground up. Dennis has done it all, from manufacturing, marketing and brand building to HR and customer service. He says his passion lies in building businesses that make the world a better place just by the mere fact that they exist. Dennis joins us on the line. A very good afternoon to you, Dennis. So good to be chatting with you this afternoon on Africa in Business.
Hey, Thami, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
So you've got quite a track record. I mean, we're talking 3 decades, a 30-year history of building businesses. And, you know, if they say experience is what makes you expert, then I'm sure you certainly qualify within that category. Won't you give us an overview of some of the businesses that you've built?
Sure, thank you. Punishment could be another word that you could use if you really wanted to use that. It also works really well. I've never worked for anyone, so I've been very privileged in that regard. We ended up buying our first business when I was 17 and a half, and I was supporting my family from age 13. My father was bankrupt. I worked 6 days a week. So I went to school in the morning and I waited at nights. And my brother got out of the Air Force at that stage and got a really small package. And we put a very small amount of money together to buy a Steers outlet, which we couldn't really afford. We went to the guy and we were like, please, could we buy your outlet? And it was for sale for 250,000 Rand in 1994. We had 50,000 Rand between us in total. And it was losing 5,000 Rand a month, which was an obscene amount of money in those days. And what we did is we offered him the 50,000 Rand in cash. And we said, we will pay you 5,000 Rand a month. And if we miss one payment, you can take your whole business back and keep the 50,000 Rand.
What a gamble.
He thought it was, yeah, exactly. He thought it was going to be the easiest 50,000 Rand he's ever made in his life. And it wasn't. It was literally just behind the counter, customer service. We knew nothing, but we just knew how to look after people. We've got Greek parents, which have always been very good at, understanding small businesses and teaching us how to like deal with people. And that was it. All we needed to do was make sure that people were happy, and we built quite an impressive business. After that, been in Steers outlets. I've had double-decker buses. I've had soap shops. I've had furniture factories. I was involved in a nightclub. I've had marketing companies, and my most recent business, which is 20 years in the coffee industry. So we still roast coffee. We sell coffee to other coffee shops and restaurants and bars. We had our own coffee shops. And it all sounds like it's amazing and you make millions, but the journey is really a big part of the ride. I've made and I've lost. Age 28, I was 2 million rand in debt. So when I started again at 28 and a half, I started at minus 2 million rand, not at zero, not at plus 20,000. And it was because I honor my debts. So I could have easily liquidated, sequestrated, put myself into a position where I didn't have to pay people back. But my father told me very early in my life, never mess your name, never stuff with your name. People will remember you forever. And that means I honor my debts. So I literally paid every cent of that back and started my coffee business with 20,000 Rand in the spare room of my house 20 years ago.
Absolutely amazing. Dennis, as you're speaking about your journey, the word integrity just brings up in my mind the fact that whatever it is that you've done, you seem to have done it with integrity. As you say, it's very easy sometimes to say, look, that business didn't work. Sorry for you. Thank you for trusting and believing in me. But, your loss, my loss, we all lose. But that's literally not the stance that you've taken.
No, I'm a firm believer that, like I said it before, I'll say it again, your name is everything. If you treat others well, with respect, and with consistency is probably really another good word, they will come back to do business with you. I've made people money and I've lost people money. And both of those people would still come back to do business with me because of the word you used, integrity. I've got my same telephone number for 25 years. So if you need me, you can get hold of me on the same number. And there have been periods, Thami, where it's been like over COVID, again, I should have liquidated and sequestrated. There was no money left. Our business, we had no events, no restaurants, no corporates. That was my whole business. There was nothing left. And I should have closed. I should have literally, I got every COVID loan I could get. I dipped into every credit card I could. I did whatever I could. And thank goodness, managed to survive it. And weirdly enough, in one of my businesses, which is the coffee business, I'm still paying for COVID debt. I literally, to this day, honor my debt, and I could have closed that business years ago.
Absolutely amazing. So business is really not just about the outside. It's really about doing business from the inside out. But I want to talk, Dennis, about Slayer. I'm literally holding it in my hand right now. By the way, thank you so much. We did receive all of your drinks at the Channel Africa office, and I'm literally sitting here, and a lot of our colleagues have had these drinks distributed, and I've actually been trying out the acid berry, which is the berry flavored drink, and it's absolutely delicious. Talk to us about this business, the Slayer energy drink. Really, I mean, it's your next global billion-dollar beverage brand, and it's called Slayer. How did you come about this particular energy drink product, and actually how's it doing in the market?
Thami, thank you. Sorry, you're going to hear my dogs barking just a little because someone's coming in the house. So if it is too loud, please tell me. What I can tell you is that I started the business so that I could do whatever the hell I wanted to do. I really wanted to build a brand with multiple personality disorder. That sounds weird. No one builds a brand with multiple personality disorder. It's like, essentially the whole point is to be able to test every marketing assumption that that you can do. We don't have the same fonts. We don't have the same colors on our cans. Actually, the only reason we've kept our logo the same is because 45 people have tattooed it to their bodies already, which is obscene. I never asked them to tattoo it, actually, maybe once or twice. But so we've built a real cult-like following. And I think the beauty of it is we've done some things really well. We have a great tasting product. That's a given. That's what you require. You need a great tasting product. Sugar-free is really working for us very well at the moment because all our beverages are sugar-free. So the whole category and people are moving towards something a little bit more health-based. An energy drink is not a healthy product. We always make that very clear. It's not a good-for-you product, but it's a better-for-you product, especially if it doesn't have sugar inside it. We're not killing you with diabetes. So we've done those well. And then if you see our cans, all of the art is contributed by local artists. So we've got kick-ass packaging, probably the best on the market. And that's not me saying that. That's our fans and people that are coming to us, because we don't take I haven't been traditionally trained in marketing. I have no idea. So we can literally do stuff that marketing companies would be going, are you crazy? Don't do that. The logo's not showing.
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, I noticed as well that there's a big synergy between your brand Slayer and the entire gaming industry. Because you've been featured in a lot of, gaming publications. I remember also with one of the, was it Comic-Con or one of the others, where basically your brand was there and very synonymous with that entire animation and gaming industry. Why that link?
Nerds and geeks is the short answer. These are our people. So it's sort of true to my roots. It's who I am. I'm a nerd at heart. I love fantasy. I love Marvel. I love DC. I was probably an original gamer. I was playing games 30 years ago. So I think it's a market that loves energy drinks, to be fair. It's such an easy fit between product market fit and what that looks like. These are the people we love, and they love us back. We did launch at Comic-Con, and that was 3 years ago. Subsequently, we're not allowed to feature it at Comic-Con. We can't be at Comic-Con or at Rage, which are the two biggest expos for gamers, because two of the biggest brands in the world are blocking us from being able to exhibit there, which in my mind is a little bit anti-competitive, but I suppose it is what it is. They must be terrified of us to be blocking us from these places. But what it does is it just makes the community love us more. And we've got this, sorry.
And before we wrap up really quickly, and you've touched on this, the continent of Africa is dominated by global beverages and global conglomerates. I'm thinking, the Coca-Cola and associated brands, PepsiCo and associated brands, Red Bull, Monster. How are you performing, and what is the energy drinks market for smaller producers who are of African origin?
It's we're having an absolute ball, and we are taking market share all the time, which is fantastic. We've done it with peanuts in terms of investment, and I genuinely mean that, peanuts. And what we do know is that wherever we put a pot up next to theirs, because we sell at fairly similar prices to the big boys that you were talking about, we don't play on the lower end of the price spectrum. We sell wherever we're next to them. So if we can do that in South Africa, we can do it in Africa, we can do it in Europe, we can do it in the United States, and we would have been born here, and we'll take them on in each one of their territories. And then obviously the energy drink market is massive. It's the biggest growing market in the world in terms of CAGR currently, and going up against the big boys is the third reason that I'm in this business. Dennis, I want to prove to people that we can beat them.
Oh, Dennis, we're going to have to leave it at that. But look, wishing you all of the best as you continue to slay. Thank you for your time and for the lessons learned Thami. In your journey. Thank you so much. That's Dennis Avaden, CEO of the energy drink company Slayer, bringing us to exactly 4:52. And that concludes our C-Suite for today.
Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa One. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa One. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:54 Central African time as we take you to Kenya, where the Aviation Workers Union on Tuesday gave 7 days' notice for strike action, demanding the resignation of the Kenya Airports Authority Board, and this in response to labour disputes and the fallout from a cancelled airport leasing deal. The planned industrial action could disrupt operations at Kenya's main international airport, one of Africa's busiest aviation hubs. It has been reported that the union has accused the board of incompetence and failing to act in Kenya's best interests. For more on this, we joined on the line by Moss Ndiema, Secretary General for Kenya Aviation Workers Union, KAWU. A very good afternoon to you and welcome to African Business.
Thank you.
So looking at one of your key demands here is the resignation of the Kenya Airports Authority Board. And you've cited that the board is incompetent and have failed to act in Kenya's best interest. Can you take us through the incident of the incompetence that you're referring to and perhaps also the instances that they have failed to act in Kenya's best interests?
Okay, thank you. First, let me begin by pointing out the dire state that Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is. There is no meaningful maintenance of facilities within JKIA, and of particular interest, for example, is the runway. There's a lot of rubber deposits that have been left on the runway, which are compromising the safety of flights. There is a finding by the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, which is a regulatory body. It regulates, how services, safety measures within Kenya as a whole, and they have pointed out that the runway is not up to the required standards in terms of safety. There's a lot of rubber remains on the runway, which can compromise the safety of flights. It compromises the visibility by pilots when they are landing, and it compromises the stability of flights whenever they are taking off or landing. So that is a key component that I thought any serious board of directors cannot fail to do. Because if today that runway is closed, and Jomo Kenyatta International Airport has only one runway. If it is closed, if an incident happens and a finding is made and it is closed, then the entire aviation industry in Kenya will be grounded with billions and billions of shillings in losses. That is a very big finding on the part of the board. Two, there are findings that Kenya Airports Authority lacks sufficient staff manning levels. For example, under the ground flight safety, this is where the flight marshals belong, they don't have enough staff. Under fire and rescue section, they don't have enough staff. Above that, fire and rescue, they don't have sufficient equipment in case of emergencies. For example,
Sorry, Mr.
the
Ndiema.
water boozers.
Mr. Ndiema, you're highlighting a large number of the grievances that you have, and you've highlighted these as the reasons for your call for the board resignation. But I wonder, should you embark on this strike, are there any concerns that you might have on your side around the financial, the operational, and even the reputational impact that this might have on Kenya's aviation sector?
Definitely, it will have an enduring impact. There's no denial. But as a union, we are left with no other recourse, because even today we had a meeting with the Kenya Airports Authority Management, and they could not make any convincing offers to us. So we are left with almost zero option except to stage a strike. Let me point out this. The board of KAA is presiding over a number of scandalous dealings. We have contractors, and I will not name them today. We have contractors being paid money for no work done. And the board is very particular in pushing the KAA management to make these payments. And they are fully aware that they have not done anything. And I'll give you an example. A number of contractors have been awarded work to repair the runway. Yet that work has not been done to date. One of them was paid 30 million Kenya shillings. That work was not done. Now,
Mr. Ndiema,
when you have a board,
Mr.
Yes,
Ndiema,
yes.
my apologies interjecting here. We are going to request to conclude our discussions today, but if we can touch base with you again in about 7 days, just to get an update as to where you are as far as the strike action is concerned and the status of your call for the board resignation. And I certainly do look forward to communicating with you again in about a week's time to see where you're at regarding this.
No problem. Our strike action will not take a week from now. We are left with like 4 days
All right. Well,
from today. So, but anytime you are free to contact me.
We certainly will. Thank you very much for your time. That's Mr. Moss Ndiema, Secretary General for Kenya Aviation Workers Union. Bring us to exactly 5 p.m. Central African time as we've concluded towards the end of that interview. We certainly will be touching base with him once again to get an update on the latest. Myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire Africa in Business team, you have yourself a splendid evening further as we hand you over now to Vue d'Afrique.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en